Welcome to Everyday Linux User. In today's video I'm going to have a complete guide with 60 steps to show you how to use Linux Mint. It covers things like setting up your system, setting up your hardware, installing applications and using applications within Linux Mint. So follow along, save the video, and there will be bookmarks in the description, so you should be able to go to the sections you just want to look at, but hopefully this is useful for all you new Linux Mint users out there. So the first thing I would do after installing Linux Mint is make sure I've got an internet connection. Now I have a wired connection, and you can see that because it's this Ethernet sort of diagram here. But if I click here, I can also connect to any one of my Wi-Fi networks that are available to me. So I can click on this one here, enter my password, and I can connect to the internet, and you can see connection established up there. So that's the first thing I would do. Why would I do that first? Because most other things rely on you having an internet connection. And everything in this video, as far as possible, I'm going to try and do without using a terminal window, just to prove to you how easy it is. When you first boot into Linux Mint, you'll have this welcome screen. And if you've unchecked at any point, you can go to the start menu and just type welcome, and you can see welcome screen is there, so you can always get back to this. And a lot of this video is based on the steps in this welcome screen, so you may or may not want to do all of these things, but for instance, if we start on the first one, it's going to say, do you want light or dark theme? So you can go for mixed, dark or light. Personally, I prefer a lighter theme, and you can choose a style. So you've got Mint L, Mint X and Mint Y, and you can choose the one that suits you better. So I'm going to go for a light theme like that, or you can go for a mixed theme. Now a mixed theme, as you can see, my windows are light but my panel is dark, so actually the mixed theme works quite well for me. And it says in mixed mode most applications are light, some desktop elements are dark to create a contrast, and that seems like a fair trade-off to me. And if you go into this advanced settings, you can change things about the mouse pointer, applications, icons, desktop, and simple theming like that. You can add and remove themes. So you could choose any one of these themes here, and you can download and use that instead of the Mint one. So you would click on Windows 10 Lite theme, for instance, and click on download like that. And then when I get here, in theory, you can choose which one of these you go for. So when I go back into the desktop colors, you can see I've now got this Windows 10 theme, and I could click on that for my desktop, and when I click in here, you can see the menu changes considerably. Now personally I don't really like that, but I'm going to go back to the default. So the next thing we're going to do is set up a system snapshot. Now you may or may not want to do this, but a snapshot enables you to get back to a point in time. So if you break something, you can get back to a point when your system was working. So if I click here, it's an application called Timeshift, and you can choose whether to use rsync or btrfs, but you can only use btrfs if you have used the btrfs file system. So we're going to click next here, and we're going to see what the estimated system size is for the Timeshift backup, and you can select the location of the snapshot. So my system is on this Kingston drive here, and if you followed my previous video, I dual booted, so that's why it's only 205 gigabytes. And so I'm going to back up to SDA1, and I click next, and you can see how often you take a snapshot. So you can take it daily, weekly, monthly, hourly if you're really that keen, and so it depends how often you change things. Now if I click next on this, you can see it doesn't actually back up your home folder. So if you've got all your videos and music and stuff like that, it's not going to back those up. It's just for system, so that you can restore your system to a point in time. But if you want to back up all your files, you can do that if you so want to. And if you click next, you can see the setup is complete. And so the system can be, so if you install something bad, you can roll back to a point in time. And if I click finish, you can see I can, if I want to, create a snapshot. And you can see that's going to do that. And so here you can see my snapshot is now up to date. So if I needed to, I can now revert to that point in time, and I could restore if I so wish. I don't want to do that. I'm just going to close that down. So with snapshots out of the way, we can now look at drivers, and this is quite a good thing to do, because if you've got specific hardware, for instance NVIDIA graphics card or a sound card of some kind, or your Wi-Fi is not working, you click in here, and if you've got any drivers that can be installed, they will appear here. You can see I've got no drivers needed, but if you did, you click on the driver and then you can install it. And now we're going to look at updates. So let's launch the update manager, and you can see I've got all these updates here. It says, do you want to switch to a local mirror? I'm going to say no, I'm just going to leave it as it is, and it's just going to upgrade all these packages. So I'm going to say no to that, and I'm going to install the updates. And we have to type in the password. So incidentally, all these applications are available via the menu, so I can type timeshift for the backups, update for the update manager. So it's as easy as that to find things in Linux Mint. As you can see, it's finished downloading the updates. Now I'm going to install the updates. This can take a little bit of time, but the good thing about Linux is I don't need to watch it. I can minimize this and I can continue with my day. It's not like Windows where you have to wait for the screen to start up and then you can't do anything else. Now you can see from the update manager, it says a reboot is required, and it says please reboot your system as soon as possible. So we are going to do that. So I've rebooted. If I go back into the update manager, I should be fully up to date now. And you can see my system is up to date. So that's a good thing. All my applications are up to date. So now we have system settings. I'm not going to do that one first. I'm going to move on to the firewall. So if we launch a firewall, you can see this is called uncomplicated firewall. I think you can find that in the menu just by typing firewall configuration. You can. Let's make it larger. And it's got all the things you need there. So the status at the moment is it's turned off. But you can turn it on just like that. And that will give and that will stop people from accessing your network via this PC that you're using, but it still allows outgoing traffic, so you can still get to the internet. There's various rules, so if you do need to open a port up for whatever reason, maybe FTP or something like that, or so that you can SSH from another machine, you can add those rules in here. You can see a report, and that shows you the ports that are running and the applications that are using them, and then you've got a log here, and you can see that's what I've done thus far. I've enabled and disabled it. So let's look at these system settings. There's a lot of these, so this might take some time, but here we go. We're going to go into the system settings. Again, you can go into the system settings via the menu here, and it's that one there, system settings. So let's start off with the backgrounds. You can change your desktop background. You can also do that from here. So if I click on this, you can see under the Linux Mint folder, you've got all these options here. You can also go into Wilma and see more interesting images. So if you don't like the default Mint images, we can switch to something a little bit fancier. And you can see that's a really fancy image. And Linux Mint comes with a really nice set of images. If you want to pick your own image, you can pick your own one. So I've got a Windows 11 one there, but I can also add in another folder, and it doesn't have to be on the drive that you're using, but it's best if it's on one that's continuously mounted. What I can do is now go back to here, select that, like that, and if I go into wallpapers, you can see I've got all these pictures here. I quite like the one with the penguins. You've seen me use this many times before. Now under settings, you can actually change the wallpapers. You can play them as a slideshow, and you can change the aspect of the pictures within the slideshow, and if you prefer, you can use a solid color instead of an image. So next up we have effects, and you can choose to have window effects on or off. Now if you're on a low spec computer, you can turn some of these off, so you can turn all these off and it will speed up your computer. Now these are the fonts for the desktop. You can change these to whatever you want them to be. Let's look at the accessibility settings. This is great for people with disabilities, for instance color blindness. You can change the visual age. You can have large text, which is useful if your site is poor. You can add a screen reader in, you can put desktop zoom on, and you can go for high contrast. Now for some reason all the other settings seem to be disabled. Under account details, you can change your password. So you basically enter your current password, new password, and then you have to confirm it. You can show it if you want to, don't recommend it. You can actually change your name if you want to, and you can add a picture for your account. So these actions here are things that appear in menus on the context menu. So for instance, if I right click on the desktop, you can see I've got the ability to add desktops, change desktop backgrounds. I can create a launcher, but they're not the only thing. So if I open up a file manager, for instance, I can go into pictures folder, and if I right click, you see it's got set as wallpaper. If I right click here, it's got the mount option and things like that. So it's the action menus on your context. That's what these are for. So you can remove them or disable them, and you can remove all. You can actually download some more. So for instance, you could add a screenshot directly from the context menu. So if I download that and now I click enable there, when I right click I can do take screenshot, and now I have a screenshot. I don't know where it's put it. Oh, there it is. There you go. There's a screenshot. So you can download other actions like KDE Connect, you can VS Code Launcher if you're a software developer, and lots of different useful tools that you can use, that you can add to various context menus. And on this screen you can change the layout of menus. So if we go into here now, we've got applets. Now applets are the things that appear down here. So for instance, you can see I've got a corner bar, which I think is this. Is that correct? No, that's show desktop. You got favorites. You got the main cinnamon menu. You got network manager, which is this thing here. You got notifications, power managers. Now, if you're using a desktop computer, do you need a power manager? Printer tablets, removable devices, there are all sorts of things here, but as before you can click the download button and download some more. And these are the things that you can install. Date and time lets you set your date and time if you got it wrong when you first installed Linux Mint. You can add desklets. So for instance, I could add a clock onto the desktop, and you can move it around like that, and you can right click and you can configure. So you can change the font size, the text color, use a custom date format. You can add a digital photo frame, and there's a picture of Slane's castle. and it will change that picture every few minutes. It's just like having a digital photo frame on your desk. But I'm going to remove that, and you've got to launch a desklet that launches programs. So you basically type in the name of the program and the path to the program and an icon, and that will make it clickable. There are easier ways of doing that, and I'll come to that later. As before, you can download more. You can have weather, notes, and all sorts of different things that you can put onto your desktop. And then you can change some of the look and feel of the desklets. Now, the desktop screen lets you change the layout for your desktop, so you can choose what appears. So if you don't like icons, then you can turn them all off, and you can turn on just the ones you want. Personally, I'm not a fan of desktop icons. So you can add some extensions into the Cinnamon desktop, like wobbly windows, for instance, shadows. So if you want to give your screen a different look and feel, then these are to help you install other extensions, and then you can manage them through the manage screen here. Under the general settings, you can set memory limits for Cinnamon. If you've got a touch screen, you can add some gestures in, so you can do things like tiling. You can swipe with 3 fingers, 4 fingers, 5 fingers. You can pinch, tap, things like that. I've got gestures disabled because I haven't actually got a touch pad. And hot corners, you can set each corner to do something. For instance, if I enable this corner to show all workspaces and go up to the top left corner, you can see I've got 4 workspaces and I can switch between them, which is quite a nice thing to do. And you can do that for any corner. It doesn't have to be just this one. You can enable the bottom corner to show the desktop. You can change it to show all windows, or you can make it run a command, whatever you want it to do. Under input method, you can add different symbols that aren't present on your keyboard. Under languages, you can add you can change your language settings, your time format, system locale, your language support, so you can add support for other languages. So if I wanted Tamil, for instance, I can just type Tam and it will come up with Tamil for India. I know one of my viewers would like that. Under notifications, you can enable notifications. You can specify how long the notification stays on the screen for, where to show it. You can remove a notification after it's hit its time limit. It doesn't appear to have the ability to let you set where the notification appears, though, unlike an XQT. Online accounts lets you manage online accounts such as Google accounts, Microsoft 365. If I click on this here, I can sign in, and I've enabled my Google account. And now I've got that set up. That'll be useful for things like setting up my email later on and things like that. The panel lets me adjust things on my panel here. Now I can do that another way. I can also right click on the panel and click panel settings here. It's exactly the same screen. Now I can have it on auto hide or intelligently hide. I can make the panel larger or smaller. I can choose how the panel appears, and I can add a new panel if I want to, and I can choose where that panel is going to be. And there you can see I've got a new panel at the top, and then I can add different applets onto that panel. For instance, I could add a rubbish bin onto it, for instance, and there you can see that's up there. And if I want to remove that panel, I can right click up there and I can click remove, and then that panel is removed. I can use the preferred application screen to determine which are my preferred applications for different purposes. So for instance, my web browser is Firefox, my mail program is Thunderbird, music is both, and video are both Celluloid, so I'll change that later on. Photos is the image viewer, and then we've got the LibreOffice suite for Office, and then we've got system tools for files, calculator, etc. And then you can add other media in as well, so that, for instance, if you plug in a USB drive, what's it going to do? Under privacy settings, you can set the number of remembered recently accessed files. You can set it so it never forgets old files, or number of days that it keeps the old files remembered. And you can have internet connectivity check, so when I turn the internet on and off, you can see whether it will tell you whether it's connected or not. Under screensaver, you can set how long it is before the screensaver appears, and you can put the lock settings on, so lock the computer when put to sleep or after the screensaver starts, and the delay before locking, you can set that to time limit if you want to. If you don't want a screensaver at all, you can set it to never, and you can customize what appears on the screensaver screen, so you can always show the clock. You can show a message when the screen is locked, and there's a few other settings down here as well, like show album art, etc. Startup applications, this is where it shows which applications start when the computer starts up, and you can turn some of these off if they're not necessary. I don't recommend doing that actually. The only one I would probably recommend turning off is the Mint welcome screen once you finish with it. You can change the window behaviours by clicking on the windows and then choosing the button layout, and you can change how the mouse works, so what happens on a double click, on a middle click, right click, etc., and the mouse scroll. You've got other behaviours for Windows focusing, resizing of windows, draggable border widths, and what happens on Alt Tab. You can have window tiling and snapping turned on, so for instance, if I take that like that, it will snap to the left and it will snap to the right, but if I turn it off, it won't do that anymore. And then you can set it to maximize instead of tiling. And finally, for preferences, there are workspaces, and you can choose how workspaces are displayed. So they can display it as a grid, or you can display it line by line. If I go up here, you can see it as a grid, and I can add more in if I want to. But if I don't show it as a grid and go up here, you can see it's more in line like that. So now you've laid out your system the way you want it to, the next thing to do is to set up some hardware. So I've turned on a Bluetooth speaker, and we're going to go into the Bluetooth settings, and you can see you've got the Bluetooth manager here, and it's enabled by default. If you don't want Bluetooth to be enabled, you have to turn that off. And if I click search here, you can see it's found the speakers, and if I double click,
connecting,
you can see it's connected to the Bluetooth speaker correctly. And you can disconnect by clicking this button here. So another piece of hardware that most people commonly set up is the printer. So we're going to double click that there, and you see it's already found my printer. If you need to add a new one in, you can click add, and then you can use this to find your printer if need be. If it's a USB one, you should be able to just connect it, and if it's a serial port, unlikely, you can connect it via the serial port. But generally network printers are found automatically, especially if you have a well-known brand. If you need to manage disks at any point in time, you can double click on this disks icon here, and disks can also be found by clicking on the menu and typing disks, and then you've got this disk thing here, and that's the same tool as here. And these are my drives. So if you've got a USB drive and it's not showing up, come into this screen and you'll see you've got this thing here, and it's square at the moment because it's already on, but if I press that, it'll unmount it, and therefore it wouldn't be visible anymore. If you need to change the resolution of your screen, you go into the display. Again, you should be able to find that from the menu like that, and most of these settings you can go straight to the menu and start searching for it, or you can come into the settings screen, but you can change the resolution of your screen here, refresh rate, rotation, etc. and if you've got multiple monitors, this is where you'd set them up. You can adjust your keyboard settings, and this is a good place if you want to see what shortcuts are available. So you can go in here. So if you want to see the window selection screen, it's Control Alt and down, for instance, like that. If you want to show the desktop, it is Super ND, like that. If you want to cycle through windows, Alt Tab, cycle backwards, Shift Alt Tab, and cycle through windows. And then you've got Windows shortcuts for maximizing. If they're unassigned, you can assign your own keyboard shortcut, for instance, to. So if I want to add a keyboard shortcut for minimize window, I click here, and then you just choose what you want to do. So for maximize, for instance, I might want to make it Shift and plus, or Control and plus. And for minimize, it's Control and minus. So now I should be able to do that, like that. And you can add keyboard shortcuts for almost anything. Control Alt and End will shut down your computer, for instance. Restart Cinnamon, Control Alt Escape. You can do things with sound and media. Under the mouse settings, you can change things like you can make it a left-handed mouse, you can reverse the scrolling direction, you can change the speeds, the size of the cursor, the timeouts. You can do stuff with touchpads. Under network, you can change your network and use that as a hotspot. So if you want to create a hotspot for somebody else to be able to connect to, you can do that here. You can adjust power management. So after 30 minutes, turn off the screen. I never like that, so I go in there, I'm going to do never. And since suspend when inactive, and again this is set to never, and you can choose what happens when the power button is pressed. So if you want it to shut down immediately, you can change it to that if you want to. The sound is useful if you want to determine which device to use for audio. So you can use headphones, and you can adjust volume controls and things like that. And if you want some system information, you can just click on System Info, and this tells you about my computer. Finally, under administration, we've seen Driver Manager, we've seen Firewall. Software Sources shows you where software is going to come from. And you can see mine are coming from the US, and then the base is the Ubuntu ones in the UK. And you've got different BBAs that you can add in if you need to for getting packages from other archives. And then you've got some additional repository authentication keys, maintenance and stuff like that. And then under users and groups, as before, I can change my password here, and this is where I can add new users in. So if I wanted to add in a test user, I can do that here. And that's all the system settings. Now that's taken quite a while, and that's really the crux of Linux Mint, all the things you can change just in your system for Linux Mint. So that's quite a lot. So before we move on to the software manager, let's see what software is already installed. So let's look at the interface first. So under the menu down this left hand side, you've got the Firefox icon here, you've got the software store icon, system settings, we've got the terminal icon, so that'll take you into a terminal window. Hopefully you will never have to use it, but if you do, that's where it is. That's your file manager, that's your lock screen, and that's for logging out of the system and switching users. And then you've got the shutdown button. Now if you want to search for things, you've got this search bar up here, and then if you want to see what's on your system, you can either look at all applications and scroll down like this, or you can go into each category. Now by default, there's quite a lot of tools installed with Linux Mint. It's a fully featured desktop operating system, so it's got a lot of applications installed by default. So we've got an archive manager, and that will enable you to deal with zipped up files. You've got a calculator, character mapping for inserting special symbols. You've got the disk tools that we talked about earlier on for managing your disks. There's a document viewer for PDFs. You can rename files. You can go into the file manager, which is the same as that thing there. You've got an image viewer for viewing images. A note-taking tool. You've got an onboard keyboard. You've got password and keys. You've got a screenshot tool. We've got a text editor. And you've got a USB image writer should you ever need to write another USB drive for Linux. A USB formatter, a virtual keyboard, and this thing called Warpinator, which enables you to send files across the network. Under graphics, you've got a document scanner, LibreOffice drawing, and Pix. Under internet, you've got Firefox, which is your web browser. You've got Thunderbird for email, we'll go into that a bit later on. Transmission for BitTorrent. You've got this thing called Matrix and web apps. And I think we'll come back to both of those later on. Under Office, we've got the full LibreOffice suite. We've got a calendar. Under sound and video, we've got Celluloid for playing videos. Hypnotix, which is like a online TV viewing app. Kdenlive I installed, so that's not installed by default. You've got the Rhythmbox audio player, and then Simple Screen Recorder I installed myself. We've seen all the administration tools, I've shown you those previously. And then you've got all your preferences, which I've shown you previously. You've got all your places, so you can easily get to your various folders. And then you can see all the recent files that you've looked at. So before we install any software, look at some of the tools that we have. So under graphics, we've got this Pix tool, and this enables you to view pictures, organize them, and you can group files in various ways by tags, modified date. So for instance, I could right click this one here. I can set it as a background image. I can open it with different things. I can add a tag, so I could give it a tag. So if it was a birthday picture, for instance, I could give it the birthday picture, or I can give it a holiday picture or something like that, and then that enables you to organize things in certain ways. So Matrix is a real-time chat tool, so I've never used this before, so we'll connect to Matrix, and you have to sign up for an account, so we're going to do that. And you can either create it this way, or you can use one of the accounts you already got. So after setting up your account, you can join a chat. So I've joined the Linux Mint, and there's various different groups available, so I can go into the Linux Mint support group. I'm going to disable notifications. No, I don't want to do that. And then you can see these are the chat messages, and you can send messages and chat. It's a bit like IRC chat from the past, but that's the tool that we use for that. For connecting to email, you go into Thunderbird, and you can see I've edited my email and a password. Click continue, and then I can click done. This is a dummy email account, so don't worry too much about that. I've used it a few times. I never use it for anything important. And let's set up, and I can see my emails, and you can see there's not much in here at all. But you can use this tool for creating emails. There's a calendar tool, so you can set reminders and things like that. And this should show your Google Calendar at this point. And you can add tasks. You can do chat. So I wanted to send a new email to someone, just click new message. Type in the recipient, type in the subject, and start typing my email. I'm not going to do a full Thunderbird review here. This video is already going to be quite long. Now, web apps is kind of interesting. So you can see Matrix itself is a web app, but if I wanted to, I can call this Everydaylinuxuser. And in here I type in like that. Category, I'm going to call it sound and video. Browser Firefox, no custom parameters. Do I want a navigation bar? I don't think I do. And is it a private incognito window? No, it's not. I'm just going to click OK. And the interesting thing about that is if I now go into sound and video, you'll see there's an Everyday Linux user link, and if I open this up, it takes me to my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel now acts as if it's a desktop app, and I can watch the previous video that I created, which was a full review of Debian. If you want to listen to music, you can use Rhythmbox, and you have to select the location of your music. So if I click this, my music is actually on another drive completely, so I can go in and you can see Everyday Linux users there, so I could click my Everyday Linux user drive and that will pick my Google Drive, but I'm actually going to go into Gary stuff, and I've got a music folder there, and I click open, and all the music gets pulled in to my library. And now I've finished, I can click that import, and that's it. I can now start listening to music. Now I can create my own playlist, and so for instance if I want to do a punk playlist, I do that like that. I go into my music and I search for bands like Sex Pistols, and I can drag that into my punk playlist. And you can see I've got that in there like that. I can also click here and I can create an automatic playlist. Now I have found in the past that these are a bit hit and miss, but for instance I can do title contains love, and then you can limit it to a certain number of songs, so 10 songs, or a certain number of minutes. We can do, for instance, 60 minutes, and you can sort it by various things, so it's up to you how you want to do it. So let's do it by title, and then we're just going to click new and see what comes back, and you can see these are the things that came back. And so I've got an automatic playlist, and these are the songs that appear on that. 16 songs. I could listen to those if I wanted to. You can also use Rhythmbox for listening to podcasts. For instance, if you like Linux that much, you go to add and you do search on Linux, and that brings back a list of Linux podcasts, and then you can click on one, and if you wanted to you can then play that podcast, and you can subscribe to it if you so wish. There's also radio stations and things like that. Now for video there is Celluloid, and this is for watching offline video. So for instance I've got lots of videos for Everyday Linux User, and I'll use this tool for watching the videos back before I send them on. So previously I did a Linux Mint dual boot guide, so I can right click and open that with Celluloid, and you can see that will start playing, and I could watch the video all the way through to check it before sending it out. Now there's also a tool called Hypnotix, which I showed you earlier, and this gives you a list of TV channels that you can view from around the world. So for instance in the United Kingdom you've got all the standard TV stations, 1, 2, ITV, Channel 4. So it's like Freeview on your computer. So what about if you haven't got the software that you want installed? Well, we can install software using the software manager, and you can get there by pressing the menu key and you've got this icon here, or you can start searching for software manager like this. So if I go into software manager, it can take some time on the very first attempt, but then you'll get to a screen like this. So for instance, say you wanted Steam installed, or OBS Studio, or FileZilla. You can see recommended packages at the top, but you've got all these featured ones here. So for instance, let's do Spotify, and you can just click install on that, and you have to type in your password. And you can see that's now installed. You can launch it from here, or you can go to the menu and type Spotify, and you can click Spotify and it will open up. And of course you have to log in, and it works as Spotify normally does. So we've got OBS Studio if you're a video editor, you've got VirtualBox for creating virtual machines, Dropbox, FileZilla, FreeTube. You've got all these categories down here. You've got games, audio players, and it feels a bit hit and miss, but these are the top rated packages. But you can go into each of the categories. So for instance, if you want games, you can click on games, and then you get a list of games. And of course, if you want a list of programming tools, you click on programming, and you can scan through and find the program you want. But obviously, if you know the name of the package you want, you can go to this. You can go to the search bar at the top and you can type in the name of the package. So for instance, say we want Steam, we just type in Steam, and there it is. So I can just click on this link here and click install. So let's minimize that. If we go into here now and we go into games, you've got the option to install Steam. So if we click that, you just need to click the install button, and it's going to update your Steam environment, and then it runs the updating of Steam, which is always quite a large file, and it seems to get larger every single time I run this. Let's log into Steam. So you can see I'm logged in now. Now one thing you'll want to do if you're on Linux is go to Steam, go to settings, compatibility, and you've got name Steam Play for supported titles, but you can do it for other titles as well. And what that gives you is the ability to try other Windows games on Linux, even whether they've been verified by Steam or not as working. They may work to some degree, they may not work at all, but without turning that on, you'll never know. It does say you have to restart, so we're going to do that. And here you are, you can see that I'm now in Steam, and I can download and install my games and run my games as I so wish to do so. If you're not interested in Firefox and you want a different browser, for say Google's Chrome browser, you see that Chrome isn't available by default here. And if you want Edge, you see that's not available either. But what we can do is we can go up here, we can go into Preferences, and you can enable the Show Unverified Flatpaks like that, and click back here. And now if you type Chrome, you can see Google Chrome is available. Now it did say there was a risk in using these ones because they've not been verified by the Mint developers, so obviously you have to be a bit careful. But if they're Flatpaks, they should be containerized. If they're containerized, they should only have certain access to your system, i.e. the sandbox that they come in. But it's worth noting that there is a smaller risk. So now if I want to install Chrome, I can just click that there, click continue. See, Edge is available as well, and of course there's other browsers, Brave, Chromium, etc. So you can go for the proprietary ones from like Microsoft and Google, or you can go for Chromium and browsers like that. Now you might see here that there's two versions of Chromium. There's a FlatHub one and there's the web browser one. One will be the Debian package and one will be the Flatpak. So it's up to you which one you choose. Flatpaks are going to be slightly larger in size, but they are containerized. It really doesn't matter which one you go for in terms of functionality, they will both work. Google Chrome is now installed, so we can close this down. And if we go into the menu under Internet, you'll now see that Chrome is available there. If I click on it, you can see I can make Chrome my default browser. Now I know a lot of people don't like Chrome, but Chrome is the one I generally use. And then you can sign in and and you can go to your favourite YouTube channels and you scour all the other videos that are on this channel. At this point, I'd like to thank the people that have sent me a super thanks in the past month, and I've got this new membership thing here now. It's 99 pence. I'll be honest, you don't get anything for it. It's just if you want to support the channel, then sign up for the membership, and you get some badges and stuff like that, but there's nothing much more to it, and there's no expectations for you to do so. But if you feel like supporting the channel, then that's great. So a couple more things before I go. So we saw that Chrome is now my default browser, but if you look down here, Firefox is on this bar down here. So if I go up to Internet, right click, and I can add that to the panel, and that appears there, and I can go down here and I can right click, unpin from panel, and so now Chrome's the one that's my default. So before we go, I've shown you how to add items to this panel here. You can also add them to your favorites on the left hand side. So now when I go in here, you see Chrome is there, and what we can do is we can remove the Firefox one if we want to. So you right click on it and remove from favorites, and now that means Chrome is easily visible. For those of you who are wondering, if you can hear a kitten meowing in the background, my eldest son found a kitten stranded in the middle of a country road during the week, so we've rescued it, brought it home, and it's quite a noisy little fellow. And that is the end of the video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and keep watching because there's going to be more Linux Mint content throughout this month. But one thing to note from this, I've just done this entire video, I haven't entered the terminal once. So for people who are coming from Windows and are worried about terminal usage, you can see you can use Linux Mint and you can get away without using the terminal for most things. And you've seen here that we've achieved that aim. And there's plenty of support out there for Linux Mint as well. If you need any help, you can always ask questions in the comments of this video, and I'll try to help either via a text message on the chat itself or via another video. So that's it. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time on Everyday Linux User.